Welcome back to another video, everybody. In today's video, we're going to be looking over the squad as it currently stands after the transfer window has just closed a few days ago. We're going to be looking into the current squad, and then we're also looking at the Champions League A-list roster that was released yesterday and kind of see how that shook out and kind of just give our thoughts on this point in time where the window is just shut. We've got the Champions League squad released and kind of do some like way too early predictions on what could happen or what we'd like to see heading into January. So that's kind of going to be the gist of it. Quick video. So let's just hop right into it and check out our squad we have here. Now, this is somewhat courtesy of Nathan A. Clark from the Extra Inch. I basically took how he formats his and made a couple tweaks because I think he does the best squad updates on the internet. So we're going to start off just by looking position by position real quick and kind of look at who we have in the starting roles, who we have as backup, and then you can see those notes on the side there, kind of give some thoughts on how we might be able to improve and some things to look out for that could just improve throughout the season as time goes on. So first of all, Vicario, obviously our number one keeper. I don't think there's much doubt about that. I know some people don't like his ball playing ability, but his shot stopping is phenomenal. And he's actually, I think, in my opinion, gotten more composed on the ball, where I think he looked a little bit erratic last season. I think he's more composed this season on the ball. And while he doesn't give you as much, as somebody like Kinski does, I think he's still by far our best keeper. Obviously, Romero, captain of the squad, probably our best player. He's going to start at right center back when healthy, same as Mickey Van de Ven, obviously our best player, probably in contention for best center back with Van de Ven or with Romero. Udogie I have as the left. Udogie, I said that weird. Udogie I have as the left back at the moment. Although I've been very, very impressed with Jed Spence. Very happy to see him get his first England call up. But I think when both of them are fit, I think just having a natural left footer on that side of the pitch brings you a little bit more. And I think Spence is actually probably a better attacker when he plays on the right than Udogie is, but I think having Udogie on the left side does bring us a little bit more. But this is honestly a toss-up for me. Like if Spence starts one game, Udogie starts, I'm just as confident and comfortable as either one starting. Pedro Porro on the right side, I think he's still our best right back. He still gives us probably the best progression from deep. Really good at playing balls long. He's obviously his crossing, and he's gotten so much better defensively over the couple seasons he's been with us that at first you could probably point at him as a liability, and now you might even be able to point him as a strength at sometimes. Although his 1v1 defending isn't the best, but he has really good instincts and aggression, and most of the time does a good job. Paulinho, I think, is still going to be our number 6, although I put Bentancur in there. Kind of could play either one of the 8 or the 6 position, depending on if we're playing a single pivot or a double pivot. I think Bentancur is kind of in that midfield 3 group with Sarr as the box-to-box 8. I think one of those, like 2 of those 3 will pretty much always start most games unless it's a kind of a rotation game, like a cup match or we have heavy rotation in the squad. And then Sarr, obviously, box-to-box 8. I think he's been fantastic this season as the de facto 10, but I think with Xavi Simons, going to try to pronounce his name correctly. Apparently that's how you pronounce it. With Xavi, or let's just call him Xavi, coming into the squad, obviously he's going to play 10, and I think he's going to start most matches. So I think you push back Sarr to 8 to some degree. But again, that all depends on what formation Thomas Frank is playing and where he wants his players to be, because Sarr could be more of an 8 and pushing up higher some games. Maybe he plays in that double pivot some games and is a little bit deeper and kind of doing the thing he does well, just keeping the ball moving. So we'll see with him, but I think he's kind of, with as well as he's played this season, I think he's kind of a locked-on starter for most games, or in that starting, I call it a starting 13, because I think there's a couple players that are basically starting quality, and Frank sees it as that, but with some rotations, who knows, right? And then obviously Xavi's in the number 10. I think that's pretty much not locked on until one of Decky or James Madison comes back. Kudus, again, locked on in the right wing position, already has given us so much this season. Like, he's been a revelation in that position from years past. Odebear, I have in the left wing. I toggled with putting Johnson there just because that's where Frank has been playing Johnson. He's been starting him at the left wing, obviously. But I think with the performance last game, especially, and some of the performances before, I know he got 2 goals, and I've made, part of the videos I've made, I've done breakdowns on what he brings to the squad, but what he also doesn't bring to the squad. I think Odebear, with his cameo last game too, I think that he'll get more playing time at that left wing and ultimately will probably become the starter at left wing. Although that's why I put Kolomwani in brackets there between left wing and center forward, because I think there is a world where Frank's going to try out Kolomwani as the left wing starter. Although I think he's better through the middle. So depending on the game and depending on obviously Solanke's fitness, which I just realized I probably should put him in the injured category, because right now we just don't really know what his status is. So I guess that's a good time to talk about Solanke. Like, they told us that he would be available pretty soon after the international window, but it might not look like that. So let's put him in injured for now. And so yeah, you have kind of Richie, obviously the starter for now, and then Kolomwani I think is going to get a lot of game time because we're going to start having 2 games a week here, even 3 sometimes, pretty quickly. So I have Tell as I'm not going to move too far. Okay, so that's kind of the starters, right? That's the starting group that I think is pretty much locked on for most games to be our starting unit. The only other one that I kind of, other than Johnson, why do I have Madison here? I have him twice. my bad. Other than Johnson, who we spoke about a little bit, I did kind of have Bergvall in that starting conversation. I really think that he should have started the Bournemouth game. I think that would have been the perfect opportunity for him to show off his skills, and we saw what he brought in the second half when he came on. So I think he's definitely in contention, but I think Frank must just kind of want a little bit more out of him, wants to see a little bit more out of him maybe before putting him in that 8 position. But then also you have to think about he's contending with Sarr, who's been fantastic. So it's kind of maybe just hard to get into the midfield at this point right now with so many of our midfielders playing well, which is a great thing, even though our midfield was non-existent in the last match. So, take that as it is. But so that's basically a starting unit, right? So and then the squad depth, we basically have obviously Kinski and Austin as the 2 backups, I think in that order for sure. Danso I have going between the right center back and left center back. I think he can play either one pretty well. Honestly, I think that he, for a right footer, is pretty 2-footed and brings a lot to the left center back position. So that's been good to see, because it sounds like Davies, Thomas Frank doesn't really view him as a center back. He made comments on multiple occasions that, he can play left back, and on, if needed in a pinch, he'll play center back, which is slightly different from previous managers. So maybe he doesn't see him quite as much as a center back. So having Danso as the backup there for both positions is really good. And then obviously you have Spence. We just talked about him, can play backup for left back or right back. Basically 2 of those 3 will play pretty much every game. And then we just spoke on Bergvall. I think Bergvall is in that conversation, right? And then Javi, obviously, no, we don't have any true backup at the 10. What you would say is probably if Javi needs rotation and Decky and Matters are still injured, we're probably looking at Sarr coming into the number 10 and Bergvall coming into the 8 potentially. Or we did see a little bit of a cameo of Matisse Tell at the 10. In the last, kind of not as much in the 10 as like a shadow striker, a secondary striker. He wasn't dropping and being creative, more so as kind of just playing as a secondary striker, right? So that would be interesting to see, because we don't have the depth at all at 10 right now, what Thomas Frank ends up doing with Matisse Tell, especially for the fact that he left him off the Champions League roster. So does that mean that he's going to be guaranteed more minutes throughout the season in Cups and the Premier League, and maybe he's going to experiment with him in more positions? I obviously debated at bringing him in as backup to center forward, especially with Solanke injured, but I just don't really see that. He really hasn't played center forward much under Tell, and he didn't look great under Ange last season at center forward, so I don't know. I'm really undecided on what his best position is, so we'll see, but that's kind of our backup unit, and really, when you look through it, not a ton there, like we don't have a super deep squad right now, especially with the injuries that we do have. And then obviously you have Vuskovic out on loan, Phillips out on loan, Dorrington out on loan. All of these guys except for Scarlett out on loan. So I don't know. I guess we could probably, probably Scarlett will be a backup center forward at times. Maybe start some games when Richie or Kolomwani are needing rest. We'll see. And then obviously you have our 3 injured players there. And then I just put these 3 players down, or 4 players, as basically surplus to requirement. I don't think Dragusin is going to fit. I agree with Nathan on that one. He had him here already. He had Solomon there already. Totally agree. Basuma moved down here because it looks like he's going to get a move, and he was left off the Champions League roster. And then Veliz, Nathan had him in youth, but I think he's just going to get sold on at some point, I don't think there's really any plans for him in the future. So that's kind of our squad at the moment. Yeah, like I just said. Oh, let's go over the notes though. Well, but let's put a bow on that and say that is our squad at the moment, right? Not a ton of depth, especially with the injuries we have. Some key positions really lacking depth. But here's what we could look forward to potentially January. So the upgrades I have still starting caliber left wing. We definitely need that. Backup left back, center back, deputy. I think that's something we still need. Although Spence can play both those positions, Danzo can play both those positions. We don't want to get into the position where we're running players into the ground. So, and then we'll see what happens with Takai. Did I not even put him on here? Oh, I did. Right there. I just missed talking about him. I don't know what's going on with Koto Takai. I don't know what his injury situation is. They haven't really told us much about him, so we'll just have to see what they give us when they finally are ready to give a more official status on him. And the deep lane playmaker, I think we still don't really have that because Bentancur is more suited to an 8. I don't really love him in the 6, and Pauline is going to need rest, obviously. So, again, same thing with Bergvall. I didn't really love him in the 6 as much. Neither of these 2 players are the best passers of the ball. Pauline is not necessarily the best passer of the ball either, but he gives you elite recovery, tackling, just being dominant in the midfield kind of attributes. So that's why he is obviously the clear choice at starting number 6. But things to keep an eye on through the rest of the season. Odebear and Tell for left wing. Are either one of those 2 players going to really come on strong and kind of just grab that position and make it theirs? We'll see. I have more faith in Odebear than Tell at this point, which is strange because I think Tell has a bigger ceiling, but I think Odebear has just looked better so far, if that makes sense. Kolomani for center forward. Richie's played well in the first couple games, had a stinker last game, but maybe there was some fatigue there, who knows. But Kolomani is by far the most talented player we have at that position, including Solanke when he's here. Kolomani at center forward could be a top, however put a number on it, player in the world at center forward if he lives up to his potential. And he had a pretty decent second half of the season when he went on loan to Juve last season. I kind of made in my last video, a big part of it was about Kolomwani, and I have a short about him as well if you want to check that out to get a little bit more detail on him. But I think he's going to be probably playing himself into the starting role at center forward if he lives up to his potential. And then Madison, when healthy, and Bergvall passing progression are 2 things I want to keep an eye on, because I think when Madison's healthy, obviously he gives us backup in the 10 and probably starts some games as well. I think it'll be fierce competition depending on how well Javi's playing at that point, if Matters is going to come right in and contend for that position. But also, I'm kind of curious if Frank ends up dropping him a little bit deeper and playing him as an 8. He doesn't have the best like defensive numbers to do that, and he might, not really hold up physically to be a really physical 8. Like if you compare the two, and we will just in a second, we're going to compare the radars. If you compare Matters and Bergvall is way more of a combative number 8. He actually gives you quite a bit as far as like the defensive and tracking and being physical part of the game, whereas Matters doesn't, but he has elite progression and passing abilities. So I'm wondering when he comes back if Frank's going to experiment with him a little bit deeper to get him and Javi both in the game at the same time. We'll see what happens with that. And then Bergvall passing progression, as I just talked about, it's kind of like the biggest thing that's missing from his game right now to become like a true elite midfielder in the Prem right now, is that like he really, and maybe this is a good time to just go over to the data, he really struggles with passing. He's not the best passer. As we can see here, Bergvall in the blue, a pretty decent carrier of the ball, gives you good possession one, so that physicality, good and pretty decent in duels, not great obviously, but pretty decent. But then his passing numbers here, as you can see, these 4 points here, just not a great passer. And it's not that he's like technically not a great passer. I just think at this point in his career, and maybe taking the step up to the Premier League and to playing more high-level European football, has been maybe a little bit too much of a step up as far as his confidence in passing goes. Because if you look at his tape from when he was still playing in Sweden, I believe, he was a little bit more confident in making those progressive passes and key passes and taking more risks. So maybe it's just a little bit of something he needs to grow into this season, of being a little bit more confident with his passing and not, taking the safe option all the time. But to compare, I wanted to talk about that James Maddison point as well. As you can see for Maddison and the pink, so let's just get rid of let's keep Bergvall. The pink, obviously, possession 1, duels, not the most defensive midfielder at all. And, physically, let's see if he can hold up. He's not, he's slight, but actually when he's fit and he's not anywhere close to being injured, he actually does give you a pretty good amount of, aggression and, want to get to the ball. But he's not the most physical player. But as we can look at these 4 points here on the graph, incredible passer in the 96 percentile nearly in key passes, 88th percentile in progressive, 89th in forward passing, which is something that we really miss because his ability to drop deep, grab the ball, turn, and push it forward was something that really propelled us in a lot of games last season under Ange. But then in the 13th percentile possession 1, obviously not the most defensive midfielder. So I wanted to compare that to Mikkel Damsgaard, who was basically Thomas Frank's number 10 last season, but he played a little bit more of a defensive role than people probably would imagine, right? You can see definitely more defensive than Matters, but not quite as defensive as Bergvall. And then not as great of a forward passer. It seems like at Brentford, maybe they were just a little bit too conservative and played the ball sideways and back a little bit too much. But then the other points on the graph are very similar to James Maddison. Even carrying ability, very similar. Forward passing, key passes, just behind Maddison in the 95th percentile, and actually a little bit higher in progressive passes than James Maddison. So it's like, I wonder if Maddison, it's like we're looking at the 2 players here. If this was let's get rid of Damsgaard for a second. If this was one radar, I mean, that's the perfect midfielder. So I'm wondering, between the 2 of these players, does Lucas Bergvall take a step up in passing ability, or does James Maddison become a little bit more solid in the midfield, and will Frank trust him at all at the 8 position playing alongside Javi? We'll see. We'll see if either of those things become reality. But something to look out for throughout the season. So last thing to touch on just real quick, as I kind of alluded to, here is our Champions League roster. I've broken it into the 4 columns of the non-homegrown players, the club-trained players, association trained players, and then the players that were left off, the notable ones at least, right? And this is just the A list. I didn't do the B list because that, frankly, I don't quite Think a lot of those players will contribute, but you never know. They contributed last season in the Europa League run, so we'll see. But obviously, the biggest names left off are Matters, Tell, Kulusevski, Dragusin, and Basuma. Dragusin and Tell being the two that were probably a little bit more surprising. Dragusin is supposedly going to be back soon, but Thomas Frank also said that he's going to need a couple months to get acclimated, so that makes sense why he's left off. For this is just the league phase, if you didn't know. So it will, if we make it through the league phase, which I think we have a great chance to based on our draw, we can get a new squad in February, I believe. So as of now, this is what we're looking at. And then Basuma, obviously being left off because he's still rumored to be moving to Kai. I don't know what's going on with him, but he's left off. And then Tell is the big one. It was probably going to be between Tell and Odebear. There was some talk that they might be able to leave off Kinski because Kinski could be pulled up if needed because of like a goalkeeper kind of loophole in the rules. But he just put him on the official roster and left off Tell. So that's a big bummer for Tell. But I do think that he's going to bounce back from that and take that as an opportunity to, like take the starts that he does get and really try to make the most out of them, because it's honestly an open competition at this point for him and Odebear to lock down that left wing position. Either one of them could really come in and steal that away and make that theirs for the rest of the season. So that'll be something to look out for the rest of the season. Overall, I'm feeling pretty, like I'd say I'm pretty, it's a tough one. I'm feeling somewhere between confident and like slightly pessimistic of how the squad will hold up through this period of the season, because, especially with the Champions League squad as it is, you can't make any changes until later in the season. Now we can bring in some players in January if the cup competitions and Premier League aren't going as well and we have some players going down injured. But that's still a long ways away. So I'm just fingers crossed that things are going to be going well for the squad. Anyways, I'm rambling on at this point. I said it was going to be a short video. I'm looking at recording for 22 minutes, so we'll see. We'll see how long this ends up being. But anyways, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. I'm going to catch you guys in another couple days. I think I'm going to have my official Premier League predictions out for the season. You can get mad at me if you want to. I just like to do them after the transfer window because so much changes. So, and they only play 3 games. I mean, there's 35 left to go. It's not like, we're cheating all that much. So anyways, that should be out in a couple days. I'm sure I'll catch you guys at some point with another video, but that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Peace.